All right, Olle, here we are.
Yes.
We're in Barcelona.
Finally in Barcelona. I've been looking forward to this.
When's the last time
because you know what this means for us?
What's it mean?
In the Transparency Exchange API, we're in beta release, finally, after a long work.
This is like the moment of truth for you, huh?
It's the moment of truth.
Nice. So we're going to talk about that and other things you're doing with OWASP, and I know we're going to be lining up a conversation after the event to dig into some fun things there. So for folks who have not met you yet, maybe a few words about who you are, what you're up to, your role within OWASP, and we'll go from there.
Oh, just a few words. I can talk about myself for hours, you know.
Go for it.
But I'm a consultant. I've been working with open source for more than 30 years. I'm one of the core developers behind Asterisk, the open source PBX. I also work with other IP telephony platforms. But as a consultant, I became more and more involved in embedded systems. And we noticed that there was a new star in the heaven called the Cyber Resilience Act, which is the biggest change for the software industry worldwide ever.
Right.
Because I've been working with application development for years. I'm not going to tell for how many, but we've never been regulated. We could do whatever we wanted. And our industry is becoming regulated.
Right.
And that's a big, big change. Manufacturers will have to take responsibility for the user's cybersecurity for the first time ever.
Right.
And for me, that was a big change. And I spent too much time reading legislations instead of writing code.
Well, hopefully some of the stuff you're working on will take that burden off a lot of the developers and manufacturers so they can make stuff done, not just be audited.
OWASP is all about application security.
Right.
We have the tools, we have the processes, we have the programs needed to make secure software. We have the skill sets.
Right.
So OWASP plays a big role in this transformation of the software industry.
Absolutely.
And being here in Barcelona shows that we're actually taking responsibility for it.
And of course, OWASP, the W stands for web, which is the kind of like the original.
It did once upon a time, but now it stands for worldwide.
Worldwide, exactly, because of course, there's cloud, which can be on-prem, there's mobile, now we're talking agents and all kinds of other things.
And not only US, but also Europe and Asia.
Exactly. So, yeah, a lot of transformation for the organization, and a lot of growth, a lot of change as well. Let's talk about the CRA and the projects that you're working on with OWASP, looking at bill of materials and supply chain. And, so maybe share with us a bit about what you have going there.
Well, let's draw up the picture.
Okay.
You're a customer in a large enterprise. You buy products with the software, either embedded systems or standalone software, from hundreds of manufacturers, right? Those manufacturers, if they're lucky, have thousands and thousands of customers. And those manufacturers, when they build the software, they use open source components from large range of sources. So you see how the tree grows?
Right.
There's supply chain everywhere. And now with the CRA, the manufacturer is responsible for everything in his product.
Right.
So they need information from upstream. And if I'm a consumer, I need information from the manufacturer about the state of the components. Do I have any vulnerabilities? Is there another log4j coming?
Right.
And if there's another log4j coming, where in my platform do I have that? I need current information, current SBOMs. And when I started looking at this, I saw customer logins to portals, email being sent with software bill of materials, all kinds of weird stuff, and it didn't scale.
Right.
And
probably not effective, even if it didn't scale.
No, the amount of man hours I would have to spend to manage my supply chain and try to figure out if I had another vulnerability in it, that was costing too much. So I started looking into automation, and I didn't find any projects. Then I looked into Cyclone DX, and they had a small ID called the Bomb Exchange API, which we took and we have changed it quite a lot. is now called the Transparency Exchange API because we're exchanging much more than just the bill of materials.
Okay.
We're exchanging vulnerability information, attestations of all kinds, maybe patches and maybe documentation. So we're trying to automate the whole software supply chain step by step by creating a standardized API that will be standardized in ECMA International in a similar way that we already standardized Cyclone DX in ECMA.
Okay. So maybe for the benefit of everybody, including myself, Cyclone DX, that's an OWASP project?
Cyclone DX is an OWASP project and it's the standard for creating bill of materials.
Right.
You can create software bill of materials, which was the starting point really. But now you can create software as a service bill of materials, hardware bill of materials, cryptography bill of materials, which is essential for the post-quantum crypto migration we have in front of us. That's coming as well, and that's going to be a huge thing. We just got new reports here in ENISA about the plan for that, which goes hand in hand with the plans for changing the world with Cyber Resilience Act and NIS 2 here in Europe.
Right.
So we have a lot of things in our plate.
That too, yeah. NIS too, exactly. So the project exists. I know I got to listen in on a few things. I wasn't able to pay total attention, but you have a working group that's actually investing, volunteers investing their time to make this happen. What's the current state of the project? And
as I said, right now we're in beta 1, and the reason we are here in Barcelona is that you can't develop technical standards without actually have running code. So we called for a first hackathon together with ECMA International, so it's OWASP and ECMA organizing the hackathon, where we actually will test implementations and see, does the spec actually cover the use cases? Does every manufacturer, every developer understand the spec in the same way? Because writing specs is, well, not easy, but that's one thing.
Right.
But going from specs to code means that everyone parses it a little bit differently. So we're going to take our experiences from today back into the specification and clarify things. And we found a few holes we're trying to cover as well. So this is great progress. Yes, yes, I would be concerned as well. So because that would mean that developers hadn't paid attention.
Right. So it's an API-driven thing, it sounds like, and that's kind of what you're testing, that's what you're hacking. But underneath that is the data, right? So how does the data come into play?
Well, as manufacturers or open source project release new products, for each release, they have a software bill of materials, right?
Yep.
And then they create in the server, the T server, a new version object for their product.
Okay.
And customers will then
discover. And analysis automated?
That's
what is it?
Probably part of the CI/CD tool chain. Okay. But in some companies, you may want to have a process where other departments than development are involved because they need to approve the new release, they need to approve the launch of these new documents and so on. So you could have a compliance step in between.
Right.
But mostly automated, I would say.
Okay. And it includes, I'm asking, not saying, does it include like vulnerability data? So
that's the other part. When you have the software bill of materials, you can actually run that software bill of materials. For each component, you have an identifier which exists in the vulnerability databases.
Right.
And I can, as a customer, if another log4j happens and I have the software bill of materials, which we didn't last time, I can actually find out which of my products, which of my systems have a problem.
Right.
So software bill of materials is one important piece of the puzzle, and we need that to go through the whole supply chain automatically. But if I, as a manufacturer or an open source project, discover a vulnerability that doesn't affect my users, I can create another set of information called VEX that will actually tell the consumer of that information whether their affected by this vulnerability or not. Otherwise, everyone will run around screaming about every
Hair on
single
fire all the
vulnerability.
time, yeah.
So we need to make sure that as soon as someone assesses a vulnerability and they either decide to upgrade and fix a problem or decides that it's not a problem, we need to communicate that information automatically as well. Because as a manager of IT systems, I want to have that full picture.
Right.
And then I can decide whether or not I trust my upstream vendors. But that's another discussion. As long as you get the information.
Getting that first is the hard part.
Yeah,
And
because
then we
you-
can start to make decisions.
Yeah,
and
because
what's
you
going
remember
on.
with Log4j, everyone in the business was sending out forms or receiving forms or queries over the phone, support, and
Yeah.
there was so much money spent to try to answer, am
Just to
I
know, yeah.
vulnerable or not?
Yeah.
And we need to reduce that cost.
Yeah. That the ability to ask that question and get an answer needs to
Yeah.
scale. You touched on this a couple times, and I was just talking with Spiros about this a little bit as well. Kind of, he's part of the Open CRE. We talked about Open SSF. Open source is a big part of
Yeah.
all this stuff we're talking about here. You're pulling together, I'll call it a consortium of people.
That's
How do
in
they-
another topic.
Okay.
That's not in T, but hopefully the Transparency Exchange API will gather support from all of these communities. We are working closely together with Apache Foundation, and they're trying to integrate T in the release process right now.
Okay. All right. So I know that when we're done with the conference, we're going to pull a group of folks together, and we're going to talk about that.
That's
bigger
the other
picture.
part, because you know what I told you about having an SBOM and matching with a vulnerability
Right.
database? I made life very easy for me then, and you didn't spot that. So the problem right now is that in the vulnerability databases, the core one, the MVD, National Vulnerability Database, they for some reason stopped adding the identifiers of the products last year.
Right.
And they're also, both of the databases we have, CVE and MVD, are fully financed by the US, and I think that's unfair. We need a global financing, we need a global federation, because vulnerabilities and security in our software is a worldwide problem, like OWASP, worldwide.
Oh, worldwide. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
but
agree.
that's a topic we need to come back to.
We will come back to that, absolutely. And I don't know, anything else you want to touch on before we wrap here? I have one more question for you, but anything else on the transparency piece?
Well, going to conferences like this is really cool because you learn so much. And now with the legislation that comes in Europe that affects software vendors all over the world that place products in the EU market, we need to learn much more about application security. And where else do you go? AppSec Barcelona with OWASP
Exactly.
is the right place to be. So I'm
is.
really looking forward to a couple of days
Yep.
and then being really, really tired Friday evening with all the new experiences, all my new friends.
A brain full of goodness and lots of hugs with
and a long
amazing
list to read and to-dos.
yes, a long task list, absolutely. Oh, it's a fantastic pleasure chatting with you. It's good to meet you here. And
Thank you.
Appreciate the insight on the project. I'm going to ask you to step close to me, face the camera, and I'm going to ask you one more question. You're going to address
Okay.
the audience here.
Yeah.
When I say OWASP, what does that mean to you?
Knowledge about security and applications. That's a OWASP to me.
Perfect. Fantastic. Olle, thanks a million.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, everybody listening, watching. Appreciate you joining us. Connect with Olle, become part of the OWASP community, and help us all build better software supply chains.
And you'll find our project on GitHub under Cyclone DX. You'll find the Transparency Exchange API, and we really look forward to your feedback and your implementations.
Absolutely. I'll include links to that for everybody watching. So, cheers.
Cheers.
From Barcelona.